Hi everyone. Now that we're done with Boolean configuration and that we have all the data settled into our social listening platform, the next step will be to perform some data optimization. So what does data optimization mean? What it is essentially cleaning up the data so that the set that you will be using for analysis will be as relevant and as clean as possible. So if you're familiar with data analytics or like working with huge data set, you will know that with data cleaning or optimization, what it typically means is making sure that there's no missing data. It's all in the standardized format and essentially just making it into a way that the software that you're using can comprehend. But for social listening, it's a bit different because considering where our data is coming from, which is the internet, and its source is so varied, right? People can talk about it any way they like. They can use different forms, different languages. And so what we really mean by data optimization in social analytics is cleaning up the noise rather than standardizing the formatting. So we want to exclude as many of the irrelevant things that are in our data set right now to ensure that the insights that we're getting from analysis will not be skewed from these noises that are out there. So with data optimization, it's less so of a linear process, but more so of a cyclical one, because you'll need to optimize it a couple of times to make sure that the noise is getting filtered out. And those smaller noises, usually you're not able to see it unless you have removed the bigger ones that are there. So let me explain a little deeper after. But for a start, what you can do is to start eyeballing the data set. And what this means is really to go into the raw data on the social listening platform, look at the post, and sort of get a sense to see if there's any inconsistencies, there any irregular things that are in there that you will not want to include in your insights. And once you've eyeballed the data set for a little, you might be able to suss out some teams that you might want to exclude. But if not, you can always go to the insights section and to look at things like the word cloud or topic clusters to give you an idea of the prominent themes that are there. So if you don't know what I'm talking about with regards to insights section, do head back to the second part of the lesson, which is the 2020 demonstration, where we talk to you about the conversations tab and also the insights tabs, where it gives you a breakdown of what are the raw conversations mainly about. So that is the section that you want to look at when trying to identify themes. And in this case, the noisy themes that are there that you will want to exclude. So once you've identified this irrelevant data, the next thing is to come up with a list of things that you want to exclude within your booleans. So say, for instance, if I was looking at the COVID-19 booleans that we pulled in earlier, and I realized that there's actually a lot of conversations around US election, which is odd because I'm looking at COVID-19 and I'm pulling in conversation with the source in Singapore, which means that I will only be interested if someone in Singapore posts about it. And why that might be a case is that even in Singapore, people are interested in the US election. And if we're looking at that duration around November where that happened, we will definitely be seeing a lot of retweets or people sharing their opinions around the US election, although it has nothing to do with what we're interested in, which is COVID-19 in Singapore. And so that is something that we want to exclude. Once we have an idea of that, the next step will be to create booleans around this irrelevant data. And if you recall from our previous session, that the booleans are made up of three building blocks. So there are the keywords, the operators, and the location. In this case, what we need to determine is the keywords and the operators. So the keywords that you will want to exclude, which most likely, I wouldn't say definitely, which most likely will not have anything that has to do with COVID-19's progression in Singapore, are keywords like Biden or Trump, right? Because these are things that are exclusive to the US election. And once we have that, the next step will be to apply this exclusion to our business. So if you remember in the operator sections that we were talking about earlier, there are three operators again: the or, and not. Not is the exclusion operator. And what we'll want to do is to have the initial booleans that we were looking at earlier. So think of this as the exhaustive boolean string that we configured earlier, and subsequently appending the operator and the irrelevant data boolean into it. So what this means is that only post that has the first rule, that has fulfilled the first rule, which is COVID, but in the absence of the second rule here, which is Biden or Trump or any other keywords that are relevant to the US election, will be shown on the social listening platform, because that is what I want to see. I'm not interested in the US election. Once you've applied that, you can then start reviewing the data set again by eyeballing it all over to see that now that we have removed the elephant in our data set, what are the prominent themes, or what are the more prominent noises that we're seeing. So this is what I meant earlier, that this is a cyclical process, because say if there are smaller noises in here, we might not have identified it if there are bigger irrelevant data, say the US election. It would have dwarfed all the other noises that we would want to exclude. And so doing this process for a couple of times will really ensure that the final data set that we're analyzing is as clean as it can get, as relevant to our objective that we've set in the initial stage, and that the insights that we're able to get is the most relevant to our business question. So I would advise doing this process for about 2 to 3 times, but it really depends on the data set that you're looking at. So after 2 to 3 times, it should be good to go, and that is when you can start the most exciting part in this entire journey, which is data analysis. So for all that and more, I'll see you in the next lesson.